Hi everyone, my name is Mrs. Knapp and welcome to Medicare and You. Okay, so, oh boy, here we go. Medicare and You is this booklet here, and I hope you brought it with you today so we can go over some of the things in the book. Just a little disclaimer before we start. I am not a member of Medicare. I cannot give Medicare advice, insurance advice, or any other kind of advice. And if you have a problem during this broadcast, please call 911 if it's an emergency, or go to your local hospital or quick care. Okay, let's get started. So you received this book and you took a look at it, but you didn't really go through it per se, right? See that here? Okay. So, maybe you have, maybe you haven't, maybe you have specific questions or something like that, in which case, I'll do my best to help. However, if you need help signing up for Medicare, I can help you as a health advocate. I do charge for that. But let's see if we can answer some of those questions now, okay? All right, so the first thing, I want you to open your books here, and we're just going to go to the first page here. Okay, it looks like this. Okay. I'm showing you the book because I thought that creating a PowerPoint would help, but I think this is easier for you to just take a look if you've got the book and we're going through it. All right. So this is do things now. When Medicare comes rolling along and you're eligible, you must sign up for it. If you don't, you'll get penalized. And you don't have to take the money now. You don't have to do anything else but enroll in it. So, as soon as you're eligible, 62 or 65, whatever you choose, that would be something that you're going to want to do right away. Okay, don't wait. All right, now you may want to ask somebody, this lower part here, okay, if you need help to speak for you, or whatever the case is. Again, I can help you with that as a health advocate, but if you have a family member or friend that you prefer, that's okay too. I don't have a problem with that. So I think whatever makes you feel comfortable is the best thing to do. So in your first year, right, let's leave this here for a minute. Let's see if I get that closer. Okay, here we go. So you want to find out what Medicare covers. That's very important to know before you start using it, all right? Because the moment that you start using it, the plan kicks in, and you'll be not, you may or may not have a clue how that goes, okay? So it's very important to find out what's going on. You can get help paying Medicare health and drug costs. You got to find that out, and I believe you can find that on page 91 to 96, and those would be the details. Review your claims. That's very important, okay, to keep a good record of your claims when you submit them. So let's continue on. All right. Now, some people like to buy a Medicare plan in addition to what they already offer, okay? You probably have, as soon as you turn 62 or 65, I'm sure you'll get a whole host of people calling you and sending you cards, just like my husband did, and get inundated. Oh, you can have this Medicare Advantage plan. We're going to help you with your investment. You could choose, A, B, C, and you need to find out how taking an extra plan affects the way that you look at your medicine and your medication, because you really have to say, for example, if you have a prescription that you regularly have, and you should find out if Medicare can cover that or not, because if they can't cover it, maybe you want to take an additional plan that would help you to cover it. So you know, this is all up to you. Again, I can recommend someone in your area, but depending on where you are, of course. But I think the best thing for you to do is find out, analyze what drugs you buy, find out if there's a reason for you to take additional insurance or not. That's completely up to you, all right? This course is not about helping you decide those matters. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them during this video. Okay, so we get to the table of contents here, all right? Now, I've marked off some things that I want to go through. And, you know, you can go forward in the book too. So page 4 and 5 tells you what the parts of Medicare are and how to use them. And you have your Medicare options here. So again, that, you know, what I just said is very pertinent for you to know so that you can do that, okay? Now, most of how you decide, you know, most people have PPO or they have HMO. And in HMO, you're limited to who you can have as your provider and what providers you can go to, and you would need a referral. PPO, on the other hand, allows you to choose your providers, which may be out of network, although it'll be a little more expensive. And also, you know, who you want to go to as a specialist, okay? I don't think that includes out of state. Again, I'm not an advisor, so I can't tell you that. So this page here, page 6, talks about the original Medicare versus Medicare Advantage, okay? So you want to read through that very closely. On page 7, it also talks about when you're away with the foreign travel feature and what you're covered for, okay? So let's continue on. Page 8 says to get started with Medicare. So you, if you're new to it, you want to read through this page. And on the back here, you want to find out, again, what, let's see if I can straighten that out, what getting the most out of Medicare can be. So please take a look at those pages closely. Now, I have highlighted some of the topics here, and I think that would be wonderful for you to turn to those pages, because I highlighted them because I thought that they were important for you to understand what that is and what the terminology is, okay? So let's start with accountable care organizations. And so the book tells me that it's on page 113, okay? And I have marked that off, so I'm going to take that off of here. So Medicare is working to better coordinate with your care, and that starts with electronic health records that you can share, electronic prescribing, and on the bottom you have accountable care organizations. So what is that? And the acronym for that is ACO, and it's a group of doctors, hospitals, and other care providers that work together to improve the quality and experience of care that you get. So these organizations are there to help you improve your doctor's appointments and whatnot. So I would take a look at that section as well. But remember, that's called Accountable Care Organization or ACOs, right? So let's go back to what else I highlighted here to talk to you about. So the second category would be Advanced Beneficiary Notice of Non-Coverage, okay? So we'll go to page 101, and let's take a look at that. Page 101. All right, so I'll take my sticker off here. Great. So what's an Advanced Beneficiary Notice of Non-Coverage, okay? This is what it looks like, and it's on page 101. All right. So if you have the original Medicare, your doctor and other healthcare provider or supplier may give you a notice called Advanced Beneficiary Notice of Non-Coverage. What is that? If they think Medicare doesn't cover the care they'll provide, this notice says Medicare probably or certainly won't pay for some of the services in certain situations. Now, it does go through some scenarios here, but let me just explain that by saying that if you have your own insurance, for example, and you've been getting, let's say in Nevada's HPN, and you've been getting the same care from the same providers for years and years and years, you want to make sure that you can continue with that provider under Medicare. So this is important to review this information, all right? And, you know, it says you'll be asked to choose whether to get items or services listed on the notice, okay? So if you choose to get the items or listed on the notice, you're agreeing to pay if Medicare doesn't. So if Medicare is not going to pay your bill, I would think that you might want to get either an additional plan or you have to go through, going through your issues and where you go and how you do it, that you have now in terms of insurance is better. Because if you are going to take certain, you know, extra insurances, also make sure that that is covered and that you understand what you're getting and what you're not. Because the last thing anybody wants to do is show up at the doctor's and not be able to pay for the services because you thought it was covered under Medicare, right? And you have to be careful with that, because some doctors will just take you and then you get a bill in the mail, and you don't want to do that. So let's go back to our glossary here. It's a little tedious, but I chose these because it's really important. So advanced care planning, which is on page 30. So let's go to page 30. Okay. Now, let's see. A lot of people think about preventative care, like going to the doctor, for example, and they land up, what's the best way to put that? Oh, well, I have to get my regular provider's checkup. I have to get a mammogram if you're a woman, and I don't know if they're doing screening for guys, but I imagine they do that too. If you're a guy, you want a prostate check. Anyway, that important provider visit once a year for a full examination is very important, because that tells the doctor exactly what may or may not be going on with you. Maybe you've ignored something that you didn't bother asking about. So what are the things they check in this provider visit? So Part B, as it says on page 30 here, okay, everybody got that? One of the things they check for is an abdominal aortic aneurysm screening. So some of you may be saying, what's an aneurysm? I don't know what that is. So an aneurysm happens when a vein or a valve or some inner organ develops a bubble in the artery. And in some cases, especially in aortic aneurysms, if they burst, that could be the end of your life if you don't have immediate intervention. So it's really important to get screened for that, because a lot of people, I don't have the statistics, I can put them down if you like, have that issue. And unfortunately, that creates a big problem because they didn't know about it before. But if you are aware of it and you're feeling kind of icky, it can happen sporadically, so I don't want to say that. But if you're feeling kind of icky, you might want to get that checked. So just no, or once a year. The other thing is Medicare covers up to 12 acupuncture visits, so that's the next thing on the list here, which is great if you believe in, in Eastern medicine. Give a little plug to UCLA here. They have an Eastern medicine division, so they do that there as well, if you happen to be in California. So on the bottom of page 30, that'd be over here. This would be advanced care planning. And what does that mean, advanced care planning? So in the book, what it talks about is Medicare covers voluntary advanced care planning as part of your yearly wellness. So this planning for care you would get if you become unable to speak for yourself. So what are they talking about? They're talking about an advance directive. What is that? So let's say you are in the hospital and you're about to have an operation. They will most likely come to you and say, have you got an advanced direction? And at this time, when you're asked the question, if you're having a serious surgery or even minor surgery, they want to know who that person is that you trust to make your decisions for you. And I think it's very important to pick that person on paper and maybe a backup person, and also if you want to be revived if something happens or you don't want to be revived. Sometimes they include donor or organ donor, but that's mostly on your license, but sometimes they'll ask that question. So it's very important to get that, especially if you're 60 and up. Very important. Even if you're not ill, still very important. They also have preventative medicine and alcohol misuse, which is on page 31, and counseling for that. They have ambulance services, because getting an ambulance can cost $1,000 or more. So this is part of their service as well, and you only pay 20% of that, so it's pretty good. Then they have what they call ambulatory surgical centers. If you don't need to be in a hospital to have an operation, that's an ambulatory surgical center, and that will be used when perhaps you have a mole, your tonsil, something easy or a scope or something like that. So. And now, which is new on the bottom of page 31, is bariatric surgery. So what is bariatric surgery? It is surgery to put a laparoscopic band around your, I believe your gastric, I think it's the beginning of your stomach area. That's why I think, because I'm not sure exactly where they put it, but that seems to be the place. In any case, they will pay for that if you are morbidly obese. So, what else? They have behavioral health integrations on 32, which sometimes you need help in your life, and there's no shame in getting help for that. You'll find that on page 32. Yeah, so they also talk about blood and having a PET scan once a year, especially for women, is important to find out if you've lost bone mass or not. This can tell you whether you have osteoporosis or osteopenia. Very important to know if you're getting older, because as we age, we may need additional vitamin D, for example. And we have cardiac sorry, I need more coffee. Rehabilitation, and they also cover that. So the list goes on and on there. Again, if you have any specific questions, you can either ask me now, or you can ask me on my Facebook page, which is advice at Dear Mrs. Knapp, or on my website, which is www.bluebirdhealthadvocates.com. And you can also sign up for our blog. You can sign up for any kind of newsletter that we may be doing in the future. And if you want a free health provider guide to take with you to your doctor's appointment, if you fill out the contact form, I will send you a download of an electronic version of our provider manual. So you might be interested in that. I find it helpful to be prepared with questions and keep a record of things all in one place, and that's what the manual is. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to go over is Beneficiary Family-Centered Care Quality Improvement Organization. So that is on page 115 of your book. Let's see, 115. All right, so contact your beneficiary and family-centered care, quality care organization. So if you think that Medicare coverage for your service is ending too soon, you might have the right to a fast appeal if you think your Medicare coverage services are ending too soon. So, you know, if you have to stay for an extended period in the hospital, and you know Medicare is only going to cover a partial part of that, you will want to make sure that you cover that with Medicare to see what your options are. You know, that's really important. Okay, so skipping on ahead here. Chronic care management services, and that's on page 34. This is something I know about because this tells us about making plans if you have 2 or more serious chronic conditions like arthritis and diabetes. And so if you expect them to last a year or so, and some of us have chronic issues with those, this would include managing and whatnot. So the providers help to manage those conditions. So you really want to talk about that with your provider. Colorectal cancer screenings are very important because every year, and I don't have the statistics with me, but every year people get colorectal cancer and they find out too late. So that and breast cancer, getting a mammogram is very important. Let's see. Now let's just talk about some terms. So on page 40 and 51, we're going to talk about an EKG and an ECG. So what's the difference between an EKG and an ECG? So we want to go to page 40 in the book, and we want to take a look at what that means definition-wise. So if you have an EKG, sometimes doctors do that right there in their office, or they'll call it ECG, which is an electrocardiogram screening. So if you have that when you go for your provider visit, it's good. Or if you feel any pain in your chest, certainly if you've been having indigestion and pain, particularly in women because it manifests differently, please don't be embarrassed to go to the hospital. If you go to the quick clinic or to the hospital and you say, look, I'm having chest pains, it could be just gas, but I don't know, it's been going on for a while, it's dull pain, go get it checked. It takes 2 seconds and it may save your life, right? So next thing we want to talk about is, so another thing your doctor always wants to do once a year is the colorectal screening, okay, which may include a colonoscopy, which is generally what they do, but they also do what they call fecal occult blood test, and they do this every 12 months. So basically they want to know if you have blood in your colon, or what your fecal matter looks like, and it could be bloody, and if you see that, call your doctor for sure. Sometimes it's just hemorrhoids, sometimes it's not, so it's important. Let's say, okay, so let's talk about health maintenance organization, which you know as HMO. HMOs can be really good for people who don't have a lot of problems and who don't mind having some of their providers chosen for them. Now, it's not strictly like that. Different insurances offers you the choice. You could see A, B, and C. If you go out of network, you'll have to pay either the full amount or more than what you would usually pay. But that also would fall into the PPO category. So it depends on your HMO. Generally speaking, you don't have a choice too much about where you go. So for example, here in Nevada, we have Southwest Medical, which is an HMO that some people go to. And it offers, child, adult, senior care. And they have a whole bunch of senior programs here in Las Vegas, which are really great. And preventative programs. So that is important for you to know if you live in Las Vegas, that you, as a senior, you can have a special treatments. You could go see a dietitian for free. So there's those kind of advantages. They have yoga classes, all sorts of health and wellness things that you can do. So what else do we have here? Mammograms. Now, a lot of people don't like to go for mammograms, and I suppose I'm one of them. It's because sometimes they hurt, and sometimes we don't feel like it's important. I don't have breast cancer, whatnot. So it's important to check for that every single year. And ladies, it's important for you to see a gynecologist every single year. And for example, Southwest Medical can provide those doctors for you. All you have to do is make an appointment, okay? What else do we have that I chose for this class? Occupational therapy. Now, there's one that's very interesting that you might want to think about. Occupational therapy is when you need extra help. For example, if you've had a stroke and your speaking skills are not good after that, or your comprehension skills are not good after that, so an occupational therapist will come to you, or you will go to them, and they will help you to speak better and to understand words and to gain some of your skills back. They will reteach you in the case of a stroke, that and physical therapist, of course, which I think is self-explanatory. But Occupational therapy is very important, and a lot of people don't think, and a lot of doctors don't think it's important for seniors over 65, and I gotta disagree with that because, older people are people too, and since we're living longer into our hundreds, it's important for them to be able to have a life, basically, to regain some of what they lost. So I would ask for it if you can. But let's keep going along here. All right, so then we have telehealth. Now, what is telehealth? So your insurance company and Medicare has offered telehealth, which is on page 50. Let's see. Page 50. And so Medicare covers certain telehealth services provided by a doctor or other healthcare provider who's located somewhere else using audio and video communications technology, like your phone or your computer. Telehealth can provide many services that generally occur in person, including office visits, psychotherapy, consultations, and certain other medical or health services, but only when you're at an office or other medical facility located in a rural area. So it's not for everybody. People who live in rural areas, which you may, that doctor might be 30 to 40 miles away, you just got a cold, you're stuffed up, maybe you need antibiotics, maybe you need a nose spray or something like that. That is when you would want to go on telehealth. But please decide and find out if you are covered in your area for telehealth, because if you're not, you'll end up again paying for the whole visit, and you may or may not want to do that for the convenience. So let's see, we covered that. Let's see. All right, let's get to the military stuff. So Medicare in the military, you can go to page 1990 and 115. If you have TRICARE, or you can sign up for TRICARE in addition to your Medicare, that's fantastic. If you can't, there are so many options, I can't go into it on this video, but if you are a senior who is a veteran or a soldier in active duty, so you would want to look at this. However, I think active duty is not TRICARE, but don't quote me on this. I don't know. I do know that if you don't get things straightened out right away, then you might have problems getting them to pay for it. So it's very important that veterans check into these things at your local VA or VA hospital. Meet with someone, understand what those choices are, because I have to say it's very complicated, and if you don't make the right choice, or if you're not fitting into the right category, you will have a problem paying your bills. So please look after it. So on pages 83 and 89, so we can go to that. 83 and 89. You have information about, let's see why I'm talking, 83 is drugs that your doctor might prescribe for you. So on 89, page 89, it talks about your health coverage for veterans. It does give you a phone number to call, and I suggest you call it. See if you can make an appointment to talk to somebody, because you really need to understand that. And then they have federal employee health benefits programs. So if you were a federal employee, you'll want to talk to them. There is a number, it's called FEHB is the acronym, and there is a phone number there. You can understand your benefits under Medicare, okay? Sometimes you can find out information just by listening to their recorded message, but I always like to talk to someone if I can. And yes, it's hard to be patient while you're waiting for, I don't know, maybe a half an hour on the phone. But it's so important, don't wait till the last minute. You get that information now, okay? You have another one, which is Civilian Health and Medical Program of the Department of Veteran Affairs. So there you have another department again. On page 90, you have a phone number that you can call. You have TRICARE on that page, and you have Indian Health Services. So the Indian Health Services is the primary health care provider to the American Indian Alaskan Native Medicare population. So you would want to check that if you are a Native and see what is available to you after the age of 62 or 65 or whenever you decide to take your Medicare. Lastly, I just want to mention one more thing. If you have Medicare and you need help in the home, you can give me a call, but I know that 3 days a week, depending on your state, where you're from, could be 3 days, I'm not quite sure. Here in Nevada, it's 3 days, where you can get help to come in, bathe you, to clean your house, to help prepare meals, things like that. So you would want to definitely check into that if you have to do both Medicaid and Medicare. Anyway, so that's it for now. I had hoped to make the course longer so I could get into more detail, but unfortunately I can't do that. So please review this video. It will be up there for your viewing, and I hope that you have a wonderful day. Please visit my website, as I said, www.bluebirdhealthadvocates.com. Sign up for Dear Mrs. Knapp, and that's add advice, Dear Mrs. Knapp. All right. You all have a nice day, and it was a pleasure having this class with you. Stay tuned for our next class.